Hi everyone, welcome to our webinar on leading through the 6-month wall, focusing on leading ourselves for resilience. You'll see in the chat box, and you should see a notification come up on your screen if you can't find the chat box immediately. There should be a little red flag to indicate where the chat box is. You'll see there that there's a link to a page on our website to download the resilience workbook. I also emailed that to everyone who had registered before around 10 a.m. this morning. So hopefully that landed in your mailbox. That's an interactive PDF. We're going to be talking through it on the webinar today. We're going to be practicing a couple of the activities. So have that to hand, either if you've printed it out or have it somewhere on your screen ready to use. It's also something that you can then take away and use after the webinar. But welcome to our webinar. I'm Joe Nagel, Innovation Director at the Innovation Beehive. And at the Innovation Beehive, we are the people innovation experts. We help to solve people challenges by using the process called design thinking from the world of innovation. So that's been used to design these amazing things we carry around with us. It's used to design the functionality on the apps and a whole host of other products and services that you use on a day-to-day business. But at its heart, design thinking is human-centered design. So we thought at the Innovation Beehive, if it's human-centered, isn't it good to use that to solve people challenges? So that's what we do as a business. We help organizations to solve people challenges by focusing on innovation, culture, and leadership. And those challenges can include, how do we recruit better? How do we develop our leaders better? How do we solve a host of challenges? Maybe Mark will touch on some of those as we go through the webinar today. But then as we were talking to our clients and friends through lockdown and then through the last few months, we realized increasingly that one of the biggest challenges facing our clients, and they're just going to pop up on the screen now, is actually how do we keep ourselves resilient through these challenging times? You know, we published a white paper called Leadership 4.0, which talks about how we need to lead in these uncertain times. And one of the key principles of that is about leading in health. So we developed this webinar and we developed a workbook to help our team, to help our clients to be able to lead themselves in these times of resilience. So welcome to our webinar on leading through the 6-month wall. And we're going to be talking through various practices that you can adopt and you can use to develop your own resilience and maybe share them with your teams as well. So I'm delighted to hand over to Mark O'Keefe, founder of the Innovation Beehive, who's going to be our guide through the next 45 minutes to 1 hour.
Great, thank you very much. So great to have so many people on this webinar this morning. I have beautiful sunshine beaming in through me here, so I'm taking it as a positive that I'm slightly glared by the sunlight this morning. But hey, as we'll learn later on, it's about looking for the joy. So I'm sure many of you are practicing your resilience this morning, particularly if, like Joe, you stayed up late into the night, I understand, to watch the US elections. What time did you get to bed last night, Joe?
I mean, Mark, it was around 4 a.m., I think. I think Florida had been announced, and then I kind of gave up on the whole thing.
I called it a night at 1 a.m. and went to bed. I'm sure you're practicing your resilience and your well-being this morning. But actually, you know, where are we now? On the next slide, you'll just see the kind of incredible bumpy ride that we have all been through, whether we're a CEO, whether we're a director, whether we're a manager, whether we're an officer, or whether we're a frontline member of staff. None of us across the world could help but be affected by what's happened over the last 6 months. You know, we're now in England, we're in a state of lockdown that just comes into force tonight at midnight. We've had pubs on curfew, we've had the aviation industry, a number of our clients in the aviation industry absolutely devastated by COVID-19, and don't even get me started on the high street. And as we keep coming across new challenges and new things we need to do, new information, new news, many of us are really feeling now that we've gone right back to March. A lot of people said that, you know, we got used to it in March. It was a bit kind of exciting and disruptive at the beginning. We had to learn all this new sort of technology. We had to get used to working from home and homeschooling. But then I started to move into some sort of process of being able to cope thinking this would all be over by September, October, and certainly by Christmas. And what we found more and more, our clients and colleagues in the business saying is, I'm really hitting this wall. I don't know how I will have the energy or the resilience to do this again. My energy tank is empty. I feel like I spent all my fuel coping with the first lockdown, with the first challenges of COVID-19. How on earth are we going to pull on our resilience, refuel our tanks, and cope going forward? You may feel a little bit like the next slide here, sort of hanging on really on the edge of a precipice just by one hand. And I would say, actually, if you are feeling like that, you're not alone. So many people, whether it happens just on a day or an hour or it's continual for them at the moment, we are all in the same boat. We are all experiencing this, and we are all having our individual resilience being challenged. So we're going to do a bit of a poll, actually, Joe, aren't we? We're going to just understand kind of where people are today. So how are you feeling at the moment as you enter into this webinar, whether you're anxious, concerned, fearful, tired, determined, optimistic, exhausted, or confident? So choose as many as you like, I believe. Is that right, Joe?
That's correct. Yeah, they're multiple choice. So, you know, some of us are going to be feeling one thing one moment, another thing the next moment. So, you know, select all the words there that resonate with you and apply. And you can scroll a little bit. There's a couple of extra words if you scroll down. And if there's any words that aren't on the screen that you feel apply to you, feel free to type them in the chat box as well.
Oh yeah, actually nicely just hidden is the word happy. So do scroll down if you're happy, as the song says at the moment. So we'll just wait for a few more people to vote. And then I believe, Joe, you'll be able to share.
Certainly will.
The poll. Yeah, nearly there. There's one shy person. We're gonna have a yay.
Had an interesting word come through on the chat, Mark. Discombobulated.
Discombobulated, yeah.
I'm not sure we need to add that one to the list.
I do like it though, very human, being discombobulated. So thank you so much. Let's have a look at the results. Joe, I'll hand over to you.
So here we go. I mean, it's a fairly mixed bag. I can see that there's actually 3 winners in terms of the words that are coming out. So we've got anxious, concerned, and optimistic. So that is a mixed bag, even at the top there. And then as we sort of move further down the scores, as it were, it seems odd to talk about feelings in terms of scores, but I can't think of another way of doing it in the context of a poll. We've got quite a few people feeling determined, tired. I'm tired. If I could have voted on this, I would have certainly selected that. I would have tried to select it multiple times.
Self-induced.
Confident. There's a certain element of confidence. A quarter of us are feeling confident. So Mark, it's a really mixed bag. But you know, what do you think it tells us that people, the 2 out of 3 of the strongest ones are anxious and concerned?
So I think they're probably what we would call in Ireland kissing cousins. They sit alongside each other, but I'm pleased to see that actually coming alongside that is optimistic, and then supporting that is determination. And that's what we're going to try and help you do today. Put some micro habits in place where you can take control of some of the emotions that you're feeling at the moment, acknowledge them, know that they're there, and by acknowledging them, you're able to then own them. You're able to confront them, and hopefully we'll give you some tips and micro habits to help you move through the wall, because literally on the next slide, you'll see the wall. It's there right in front of us and we're feeling anxious and concerned. We have to work out a way personally to go through it, to go round it and go over that. Whether that is actually in terms of what we do professionally, day to day in our work life, or whether we do it in our personal life, we all have to find a way to get over, through, or around this wall. And part of that is about really tuning in to where you are at the moment. So we're just going to take a moment just to ground ourselves, move away from all of the noise about the election, or the emails that you might need to get to after this call, or the conversation you just had before this call. Let's just take a moment to ground ourselves. And I'm going to ask you to do a little bit of a grounding exercise with me. So it's a breathing exercise, and a really good way to get in contact with how you are and check in on yourself is to have a real consciousness of your breathing. So for this activity, I'd invite you, you're not on camera, so you're alone with yourself. If you just want to close your eyes for a moment. And as you close your eyes, just notice what's present in your mind at the moment. Notice all of the voices, the noise, what's in your mind at the moment. And then if you're sitting, just really feel yourself in the chair. So the chair has you. There's no striving or straining. Let it take your weight and support you. And now we're going to move our consciousness into our breath. So breath is always a great way to let go and center yourself in the present. So just become aware of your breath. And draw your breath in through your nose to the count of 3. The little pause at the top of the breath. And then letting the breath out slower to the count of 5. So breathing in through the nose to the count of 3. And then a soft release of air through the mouth, counting slowly to 5. And let's just do 4 conscious breaths like this. And by being conscious of our breath, it begins to still us. It begins to change our state. So just breathe. Use it as a way to come out of the churning mind and be present in your body. So by allowing your awareness to come out of the mind, you're leaving the mind to just whir and do what it does quite happily. And now bring your awareness into your face. So feel into your eyes, an inch into your eyes, and let them relax. Let your forehead relax and your cheeks soften. And scan down your face and let your jaw relax. Just let your jaw go. Open your mouth and just let your tongue relax in your mouth. Being really present in your body. Relaxing your neck, letting your shoulders relax, and letting your hands become heavy on your lap or by your side. Now bring your consciousness to your back, focusing on your lower back. Notice any tight spots and breathe into those tight spots and relax them. Releasing the small of your back into your chair. Just let your weight drop and let your tummy relax. And continuing your slow breathing, 1, 2, 3, breath in, little pause at the top, and then slowly out silently to the count of 5, opening your diaphragm and really bringing that fresh air into your lungs. And allowing your awareness to drop like a stone in the ocean. Breathing in, softening and relaxing your body to find its natural state. So nothing is needed from you now, just breathing. Feeling your weight held in the chair, your face is soft, and your feet firmly planted on the ground, holding you. So now I invite you to take your hand and place it on your heart and feel it beating. Feel the energy of the beat of your heart and feel the rhythm of your breath. And just relax your body and enjoy the experience of being fully present. Taking a moment in that present with a real consciousness of your body your strength, and your breathing. So we'll hold the silence for a few moments longer. Just notice what you're feeling now. The invitation is just to let go and breathe. Don't strain. Just be present and notice. And now, in your own time, come back into the space, open your eyes, and smile. So thank you for just taking that moment there. As we face the wall, whether that wall might be an email, whether that wall might be a new objective from our boss, or whether that wall might be something we're presented in our personal life around a family member's challenges or problems. As you'll see on the next slide, we're all going to be presented with the wall at some point over the next few months. And being really conscious of your response to it allows you then to be in the best possible mental state to work out, how do I go through it? How do I go round it? Or how do I go over it? Now, Joe mentioned that over the summer, looking at leadership in these very disruptive times, we put together a program which focuses on leadership 4.0. And that identified 5 practices which will help leaders to manage their teams, to inspire their teams and lead through incredibly disruptive times. It's based on research that was done over a year, talking to individuals in leadership roles who managed through the last financial crash, people who have been disrupted by technology in their industry and are constantly having to deal with unknown unknowns. And they told us there were 5 practices that leaders put in place to ensure that they lead in these disruptive times. They are leading in head, and that's about getting the operations and the finance and the right team in place. Leading in heart, which is about really understanding and connecting in to your purpose. It's about leading in habit. It's about making sure that you're consistent in how you respond. It's about practicing agile behaviors. Leading in health, about having a practice in place to take care of your own well-being and the well-being of others. And then leading in history, which is about really understanding, when you finish serving the people that you serve, how do you want to leave the world? What is your leadership legacy and what can you leave behind? Now, we had an incredibly positive response to this with a number of our clients, but it very much focuses on you as a leader. And just because you have leader, VP, director, officer, or team manager in your title, you're still a human. And there are key elements of leadership 4.0, particularly leading in health and leading in habit, that we want to focus on in terms of micro habits that you can do today and after today to help you focus on your own well-being, refill your energy packs, and make sure you have that resilience. So this is about focusing on you as an individual. This isn't about giving you skills as a leader. I read the other day, someone said it's time to double down on being human. And that's what we're doing today. We're doubling down on your humanity and trying to help you with some micro habits to go over, go through, or go around the wall. Now, the first activity, and you'll find it in your books, the PDF that you've downloaded is interactive. So if you want to fill it in as you go along, please do. We'll do some of these activities, but not all of them this morning. The first one I just want to introduce you to, but we won't actually explore this morning. It's around really reminding yourself of why you do what you do. So at the Innovation Beehive, when we work with organizations, we often create inspiring visions, missions, helping them work out what's the most effective culture to really engage their people so people can show up to be their best. And we have this expression called the duvet chuck, what gets you out of bed on a Monday morning and inspires you to come to work. But actually at the moment, when we are knee deep in all of the detail and when new regulations, new data sets and new pieces of information emerge continuously, it's very, very hard to think and remind ourselves of the reason we got into this in the first place. We get very wrapped up in the day-to-day, almost crisis management, dealing with the operations of the business. That has an impact on us personally, on how we feel and our own mental and emotional and physical state. But taking a moment just to refuel yourself and to remind yourself why you got into this game in the first place allows you to think about what's the purpose of what you do. What is it that you actually want to achieve? What is it about this role or this business, this industry that inspired you in the first place? It's almost about reconnecting in and reminding yourself of the purpose that you have in the job that you do or the industry that you work in. And to do that, I want you to think, or the activity invites you to think about a moment in your career that you are most proud of. And then going after that, thinking about how did this feel? This is about tapping in, doubling down on being human, tapping in on your emotions. How did you feel when you were successful in that particular career moment? And really honing in on how you felt, something we don't often do, allows you then to really understand what you get out of it and remind yourself of the positivity of the choices you made to go into this role or go into this industry. And then when you feel that emotion, what does it tell you? What words does it come to mind? And does it express for you around why you do what you do? Remind yourself by hooking into the emotional side of what you do in your job, of why you do it, why it's important for you. And by doing that, hopefully there'll be an element of re-nurturing, re-engaging, and re-energizing you, when sometimes it can just feel like you're going through hundreds of emails, making people redundant, changing terms and conditions, and dealing with all of the other operational and business challenges we have from COVID-19. And then just try and almost imagine that emotion as a physical thing in your mind. That reminds you of why you started this in the first place, and use that image in your mind to refuel your personal battery. Whenever you get, why am I doing this? What is this for? Remind yourself of that emotion, take that picture into your mind and use that to refuel your battery pack. So the next exercise I will ask us to look at doing this morning together. Now, this is about reflecting on what you can celebrate. So it might seem rather strange during a pandemic to talk about recognition. It probably feels that there's not very much to celebrate at the moment. However, every single one of us on this webinar this morning has had to overcome challenges that they could never have imagined a year ago. We might have felt anxious, we might have felt scared, and we might have felt lost. And we may in fact still be feeling like this. However, we are still here. And we are doing something with positive intent to try and move ourselves forward, something we'll talk about a little bit later on. You got on with what you needed to do. You did the best job you could do. You showed up and you stuck at it. And it's really worth reminding ourselves, particularly as we are facing more and more continual challenges, just taking a moment to look back and reflect at how far you have come, even if you were in a position that you would never have welcomed or never have expected. So I'm going to invite you to do a sort of a micro version of this challenge now. I'm going to ask you to think of one challenge that you've had to face since the start of the pandemic. In this activity, when you do it alone, I'll ask you to think of 3, but just for the purposes of the webinar this morning, think of one challenge that you had to face that you overcame in the last 6 months. And my guidance on that is, even if you didn't complete that challenge to the complete 100% of your original goal, did you move yourself forwards? Is there an element of you were successful within that, even if you only achieved 60, 70, 75% of what you set out to do? And Joe, you've got a story of how that's worked for you in terms of celebrating something which didn't quite hit your goal. Do you want to share that?
Yeah, sure. So when the pandemic started, and particularly when lockdown happened, the Innovation Beehive, as many organizations, we lost a lot of work quite quickly. And also we were very, very concerned about future business and generating future business. So I started looking at potential options for other. So that was my challenge. My challenge was how can I keep the business going? How can we keep the business going? So what I did was I looked for other ways of finding opportunities, and the place I looked was the public sector. So public sector procurement, which is anybody works in public sector procurement or works with public sector procurement. It's a very different different way of operating from what you'd be used to if you're more interested in building relationships in organizations, as I've done in the past and as I did when I was a charity fundraiser before I worked in the Innovation Beehive. So I booked myself on some training in order to sort of build up the skill I needed to fill in the forms and understand what they were really looking for. And I knew this training was important, and it was delivered virtually. And sometimes it's easy to get distracted when you're on a half-day training session, or you feel it's going to be easy to get distracted. So I really worked on focusing and making sure that I was going to be sort of fully present, completely cleared out my diary, got everything I needed to do done beforehand so that I could fully focus on the training. And it was really valuable. I felt it was valuable at the time. And then afterwards, I found some opportunities to go for. And well, one of them, we got through to the final round. And as Mark said, even if you don't actually get all the way and complete the thing that you're celebrating, you can still celebrate. Because to me, getting through to the final round and being unsuccessful in that particular procurement process was a real win, because it showed me that actually I had successfully absorbed what I needed to absorb from the training to be able to write a successful bid. So ultimately, it's very competitive, and somebody else wrote a slightly better bid than us. But I was delighted that we were good enough to be at the table. So that was a real win for me. And I've celebrated every day. Yeah.
Yeah, so that you didn't achieve your goal, but you acknowledged actually how far you'd come. You acknowledged the input that you had taken the time to put into this by going into the training. You acknowledged that you applied those skills and moved us to a better place of learning. And I'm sure at some point, we will be successful. I mean, we've just been appointed today for some work with the NHS. So, it is not always about achieving the goal you thought you were going to achieve. So, once you've thought of the one thing you want to recognize and you're most proud of over the last few months, then reflect on what you did to successfully achieve this. Don't focus on what you could have done better. Look for the good. As Joe said, he put the time aside, he invested his own energy into it. He wrote a bid that got us to the final stages and moved us so much more forward to understanding how to win work in the public sector. So some great things that Joe would put there in step 2.
Mark, there's an image that I think it would be useful to share for people here about, particularly coming back to that point about, celebrating success even if you don't make it, or, celebrating as you go as well. So, I go hiking a lot, and I much prefer hiking up a hill rather than along a canal or through woodland. And there's something wonderful about hiking up a hill, where at any moment you can look back and you can see the progress that you've made. Because as you go up, you get constantly, even if you've been walking for 2 minutes, you can look back and there's a view. As you go above the tree line, there's a view. And then you go a bit higher and there's more of a view, and more and more and more. And the higher you go until you get to the summit, you can turn around at any moment and you can see the reward for the work you've done as you climb up that hill. And I think it's a wonderful image for this particular micro habit, because this isn't just something that you do at the end. This is something you can do at any moment during a project, during a challenge, during your day.
We often have a conversation at the end of the day where we say, what will you celebrate today? What's gone well for us today? Even when, even in the depths of the last lockdown, where there was no business coming in, what have we done today? We had a webinar and we had 30 people on it. Fantastic. So when you've written down what you did to successfully achieve, even if it was 70% of your original goal, just write down how it felt. Again, tap into the emotion, which we talked about in practice 1. What did it feel to you? And then we all have that inner voice. We all have that inner dialogue. So how did you contain it or overcome it? Was there something that you did to say, get thee behind me, I'm not listening to you now? Think of the emotion and what you can do to celebrate the fact that you didn't stop, that you did move forward, and that you weren't derailed by that inner voice. Now, when you practice this after today, I'm going to ask you then just to pause, go away, have a cup of tea, and then come back to the list and celebrate and think about how proud are you of what you've achieved. Did you ever think that you'd be in this situation a year ago? Did you ever think you would have to think or act the way you are now? But you've identified in this activity, and you will do one here, but you'll do 2 more to say, actually, I've learned something new about myself. I'm experiencing growth and development. It is painful growth, probably, but growth nonetheless. And it's worth noting your growth, celebrating your growth. And over the next 6 weeks, I'd say at least every 4 weeks, just take some time to reflect back, perhaps at the end of the month. We're just at the beginning of November now. At the end of November, reflect back and say, what 3 things can I be really proud of that I took on, that I achieved to some extent, and that I can then tap into the emotion and understand how I quieted those voices inside my head that said, this is too hard, I can't do it, I haven't got the skills, or I'm not able to achieve this. It'd be lovely if we, in the chat, if anyone could share perhaps one of the things that they put down in terms of a challenge, something they would like to celebrate, or something they're most proud of. So we're going to ask you to use your fingers, use your digits here, and chat. In the chat function, I've just written hello in there, so you should be able to see it. Would anyone like to share something they want to celebrate over the last 6 months that they can feel proud of, the way Joe talked about how proud he was that we got to the final round of the RFP for the public sector?
Mark, whilst people are doing that, what are you most proud of over the last few months?
Oh, you know, it's interesting. I've taken quite a lot of time to think about that, because I've definitely had the inner voice right at the beginning of lockdown. I remember talking to my coach and saying, how did I not anticipate this? Why isn't this, you know, there's something here must be my fault. I had all these amazing plans and strategies, and then it's all falling apart around me. I think just in terms of personally, what I'm most proud of, because it can be personal as well as professional, I've really started thinking about how I move and making sure that, because I'm somebody who was used to traveling a lot, running from meeting to meeting. I went to the United States of America probably at least once a month before lockdown. So used to being out and about, and awareness that my movement has gone down. So I just do a few minutes of stretching every single morning, and a few minutes of stretching every single night, no matter how I'm feeling, no matter what is going on, just to make sure that I'm really, really giving myself the best possible setup for the day, and stretching out all of the stress at the end of the day. And you know me, that isn't the sort of thing that I would have done before lockdown. I'm most proud because I've kept at it. Now, some days I haven't. Some days I may have had a couple of brandies on a Saturday night and decided it's best not to try and stand on my head. However, I am quite proud of the fact that I've kept going at that. And then in terms of professionally, so, you know, at the beginning of lockdown, we wrote a lockdown strategy. As we started to emerge from lockdown into the summer, we created a new strategy and explained to the team, we've pivoted in terms of what we thought our goals were. We've pivoted in terms of our financial targets. We're looking at our products and services. So hopefully, and I've got some of the team on this morning, having a clear direction to help people that's based on where we are in a very truthful manner.
That's great. Thanks, Mark. And we've had a couple of interesting responses come through. Someone has said that she's simply proud of getting through it and having some structure with kids home learning and keeping sane. I think, you know, that point about managing the home learning and potentially a job and your life, yeah, I can totally see that. I imagine that feels like walking up a very steep hill. And I also undertook, forgive my pronunciation on this, Qigong, which I've just Googled on my iPad, which is sitting next to me, which is a bit like Tai Chi, but probably that's a terrible thing to say, Michelle. There you go, it's like Tai Chi, good, okay. And then another comment, transitioning my team from 100% office work to 100% homework and continuing to provide the same level of support to our students. Some would say even better support as it's more accessible. There you go, that's a great thing to celebrate, to actually find the, I did a post on our HR leaders WhatsApp group yesterday where I talked about you can only see a rainbow when you're standing in the rain. And I think, you know, when you can see that actually things are even better as a result of this crisis, there's brilliant to see those silver linings and those moments of rainbow. Proud of submitting several innovative UK applications and for attracting private investors. That's brilliant. That's fantastic success there. You know, I'm sure you can celebrate that as well as sort of bask in the success. So that's good. Yeah, great. So thank you, everyone. Thanks for sharing your thoughts on that. There's some really good ones, and you know, that's something to keep on doing on a regular basis. Build that into a micro habit.
Great, thank you. So as I said, this is about focusing on you. And as leaders, we are often asked by our team for the answers, particularly, you know, at the moment where our team members, our colleagues, our family, our friends are going through an awful lot of disruption, very, very difficult times. So many of us, when we're in leadership roles, whether it's in our community, in our family, or whether it's at work, we're having to give all the time. And it's really important to actually pause and make sure that you are putting some time in for yourself, that you're, as well as being kind to your colleagues, your friends, your family, and your community, that you're also being kind to yourself. And it's really important actually to acknowledge where you are in terms of your emotional and mental well-being. Part of mental well-being is around being able to speak up and vocalize about where you are, and making sure that you are really acknowledging how you're showing up on that hour, on that day, on that week, or on that month. Because talking to clients and colleagues, as we were preparing for this white paper and then this webinar here, we can find it can change almost on an hourly basis. You might wake up full of the joys of spring, and then by 11 o'clock, your energy mood has dipped as well. But it may end up coming back again at 4 o'clock that afternoon. So going on that roller coaster and being able to really kind of vocalize it out loud is important. It's about making sure that you just not only focus on the external, like what's happening out there in the news, but also you focus on the internal, what's happening inside here in your heart, in your body, and in your mind. And always looking towards the light, always looking to find a chink of light in the darkness. That idea of standing in the rain is the only way you can see the rainbow absolutely resonates there. So on the next slide, you'll see a little bit of a practice that I'd like us to reflect upon. And this is really about recognizing that you're a human being. As I said earlier on, just because you've got a manager or team leader responsibilities doesn't mean you're invincible. In our personal life, I've experienced friends who've lost their jobs. I've got friends at the moment whose parents have got COVID-19. You know, you are under all sorts of pressures, and all of those things are going to affect you. But as I said, part of the practice of good mental health is about being honest around your emotions and not bottling them up. And you may not be able to articulate them to other people, but you can notice, acknowledge, and articulate them to yourself. And by being kind and recognizing that you've had a bad day every now and then, know that everyone else does. No one has gone through this without having a bad day. I remember I was sick a little while ago, and I said to Joe, I can't be sick. I can't be seen to be weak. I'm the CEO. And he was like, you know what, actually, the CEO of Great Britain, Boris Johnson, the Prime Minister, he was sick. CEO of America, the president, current president, he was sick. People get sick, leaders get sick. You have to just go away and get well for your team and for your client. It was good advice. And with that, I started to say, okay, when a bad day comes along or a bad few hours, in terms of articulating it out loud, I actually now say, this is a bad day. I've just had a bad Zoom call. I've just had a bad Teams meeting. And for me, it means I can own that as opposed to it owning me. Once I articulate it, I put it out there as something I can almost look at, observe, compartmentalize, and then mentally just push it away. So that helps me to be able to call out loud, name it, and then control when bad things happen, when a bad meeting or a bad day happens. And also reminding myself, you know, I'm not the only person. The fact that we've had to run this webinar twice because so many people want to talk about this topic. What I do on bad days is I make sure I'm very selective over the tasks that I do. I don't spend hours going through our P&L. I don't try and pitch for a new piece of business. I do things that I like. I go to that reading pile that I've been meaning to read for so long. I maybe do something in terms of staff development or some personal development, making sure that I tackle things that I find more enjoyable than others. And I also take time out. I have never been the sort of person who went to have a lie down for 15 minutes during the day, but I'm doing that now. And I've been encouraged by one of my team who sometimes through the day goes and has a Pilates class. And that's almost given me permission to take a little bit of time out when I've needed to as well. Talking about controlling what's inside and what's outside, I really would advise you not to stay too focused on the news. We had a member of our team talk to us about her mental well-being, and one of the things that I discovered when we were having a supportive conversation around it is that she's become really fixated with the news. So the news is on constantly, even in her bedroom at night. And so I would really counsel you to be selective around the news. And instead of spending your time watching the Channel 4 news, call a friend. Don't text them, call a friend. Take a bath rather than watch the news. Go and get to bed early. I mean, by 9 o'clock, I'm starting to head up the stairs, thinking about those things that are kind to you rather than will give you or take your energy and distress you. And when the world does feel black, just remind yourself, where can you find the color? And this is about seeking out those moments of joy with a favorite snack or a long bath, looking for the color. One of the things that I do if I've had a bad phone call or a bad meeting is I go outside and I look at my garden and I look at the fact that, you know, there's a bit of color left. One of my key successes, Joe, is that in April, I planted some sweet peas, okay, literally in the seeds, and they were left by the boiler in our house. And they're still there today. There's a few of them. Yeah, exactly. So I thought, I set myself a goal that those sweet peas are going to last until the 1st of November. Well, my goodness, we're here on the 4th of November and they're still here. And I go out when I have a bad Zoom call and I go and I look at the purples and the yellows and the reds and the pinks of the sweet peas and just try and find the color, to take a moment to do those small things that nurture and are kind to me. So in this reflection, I want you to have a think around what could you do to be kind to yourself? And Joe introduced the term micro habits right at the very beginning. This isn't necessarily about saying I'm going to do the couch to 5K. I've got a client who gets up at 6:30 every morning and does a personal training session online. That's fantastic for her. If I tried to do that, I know that I wouldn't do it consistently. And then actually the mechanisms that I'm putting in place to protect my well-being would end up being a stick to beat me. So what can you do? Those small things, whether it's focusing on cooking, I'm making oat cakes this weekend, things that you can do that give you joy and can take care of you. And when you do this practice after today, also think about what are the things that's stopping you from taking care of yourself, whether it's constantly watching the news or making sure, or saying I've got to do all my catch-ups with my friends in the evenings. I've made a deliberate decision that I can't, by the end of the day, spend the evening then on calls to people. I'm really selective about how much energy I give away in the evenings so that I can refuel and make sure I'm on point for my clients and my team the next day. And I have most of my catch-up with my friends on the phone at the weekends now. So the penultimate habit we want to talk about in the last few minutes is around letting go. So as we all acknowledge, none of us would have chosen to have been here, having to cope with this massive economic and medical uncertainty. And if we're in a position in an organization or in a family, we're probably used to being in control. Certainly talking to, I recognize some of the names on this webinar this morning, you've managed your careers, you've managed your lives to be in the position that you've achieved now in the organization. But over the last 6 months, that's all been turned on its head as we've not been able to manage what is happening to us. And that's quite new to us. And as leaders also, often when somebody came to us for an answer, we might have, if we entered into a positive coaching relationship, we might have helped them work out the answer for themselves. But ultimately, at the end of the conversation or end of the coaching session, if they still didn't get it, as a leader, you probably have the answer. Now, during COVID, you may well not have the answer. You may not be in control, and that might feel very unnatural to us. And so I want to introduce you to a concept of the circles of control. And sitting right in the middle there is about what can you absolutely control? What can you directly impact? Where are you able to make a decision, no matter how tough or challenging? It might be on a personal level, what you spend in terms of your food, what you eat. It may be your alcohol consumption. I mentioned the brandy. I only have brandy at the weekend and a couple on Saturday night because, you know, when the pandemic first came out and we had the number 10 announcements every day, I found myself having a brandy at 4:30. That was not good for myself. So I can control the amount of alcohol that I take. It may be where you physically work. It may be moving around the house, as one of our colleagues does. So it's a really useful exercise just to remind yourself and list all the things that you can control. Because by doing this, you see, you do have choices. They might be smaller than you thought before, but you still are in control of some things. And by having choice, you have much more freedom, and freedom leads to happiness. You are more in control than you might think. And then the second circle is around what can you influence? What can you positively influence in others out there in the world, or what events can you influence on? So again, using this activity to take some time to write a list of things that you can influence. This might be around what you feed your family, or it might be in terms of how you advocate on important issues. So consider if there are any areas in your personal life that you'd like to have more influence over. I think at the moment, you know, all of us, whether it's in our personal lives or our professional lives, we're looking for new ideas and new innovations. If you've always wanted to do something and you've really wanted to influence the organization in a particular way about a new idea, a new way of working, or a new innovation, I think organizations are much more open now to new answers and to your influence. And then the third bit is the circle of acceptance. And this is around saying there are some things that I absolutely can't control. There are some things that are totally beyond my control. I may be passionate about them, but I cannot actually get involved. It won't influence the outcome. You know, Joe staying up till 4:30 last night. I'm not going to ask you who you would have voted for, but I guess the American election is outside of your control. And by putting your energy into something that is outside of your control, it's a sure way of depleting your energy. It's almost like, you know, if you're trying to move a boulder with your shoulder and you're pushing it and pushing it, and it just won't move, and you can't control. You're too small. You're not positioned right. You don't have the right tools and the right resources to move that boulder. There are certain things in your professional and your personal life that you have to realize are beyond your control and you have to let go of. But the last practice I want us to think about. Oh, yes?
Can I just chip in there? Because I just want to share the way that I use this tool. So yes, as Mark said, it's really useful to regularly sort of think about your world and what you can control and what you can influence and what you can accept. And one of the things that I use this tool for, I occasionally just print out a few of them. And rather than listing everything and sort of sitting down for 25 minutes and really thinking about the world, I use them if I've got a particular problem that I'm facing or a particular piece of work that I need to do. So to give an example, when I was going back to the example I used to celebrate, you know, I would use this tool for that particular final presentation that we did as a result of getting through to the shortlist. And I'd think, okay, so what can I control in this piece of work? Well, I can control the quality of the slides. I can control the time that we're presenting for. What can I influence? I can influence the way that we're perceived through my tone of voice, through the quality of the work that we're producing. What do I have to accept because it's outside of my control? Well, I have to accept the outcome. And that enabled me to approach that whole opportunity in a really positive way. And I actually did one this morning, Mark, where I was reflecting on my decision to stay up all night watching the election. So I've decided that from now on, I'm going to bear this in mind. What can I control when I go to bed? What can I influence? How well I sleep, because I can think about things like caffeine consumption before, you know, after 4 p.m. and things like that. What do I have to accept? Well, unfortunately, I have to accept the outcome of the US election. It's not for me to change. So it can be useful to sort of take a wide view, and it can also be incredibly useful to take a specific view on a specific challenge that you're facing in your life at that moment.
And you know that whole thing about being in control in terms of your caffeine. I'm having a herbal tea. I had 4, 5, 6 coffees a day pre-COVID. I only have 2 now because I don't want to have that caffeine in my body. Again, a little micro habit. It's not going to change the world, but it will change me physically and keep my energy levels up in a more natural state than a caffeine state. Thanks very much, Joe. And so the last practice is about saying onwards. So I'm a real fan of Howard Schultz, who's the ex-CEO of Starbucks, and he came in and turned that business around. And he wrote a book about it called Onwards. He's an incredibly positive man. And he used to sign off his email at Starbucks with the word onward, and I am afraid I have stolen it as well. And when there's a long journey ahead of us and we can't see any pit stops along the way, this is about really saying, what can I do on a micro level that enables me to move onwards? And so there's a practice on the next page that I invite you to look at and to undertake. So on the next slide, Joe. So when I started the Innovation Beehive, it was at my kitchen table in 2009, in the depths of the absolute global recession. I had no job. I couldn't afford to pay my mortgage, and at one point I was living on about £20 a week. I was caring for my sick brother and was picking up childcare responsibilities for his children as well. So it was a pretty tough time for me, yet I founded a business because I didn't have a job. And I knew that I had to do something every single day to try and move this business forward, but I couldn't do very much. I couldn't spend the 8-9 hours a day that I now spend focusing on the Innovation Beehive because I had other stuff to do. And did I use that as a stick to beat myself up? Or did I say, how can I move myself onwards, even in a micro way, that's going to allow me to have a modicum of success and keeps me moving towards my goal of the Innovation Beehive being a proper company, which it is now. So what I did is I said, I can do one email a day, or I can do one blog post a day, or I can make one phone call a day. And if I do that one task, that is enough. And when I completed that task, I then took a moment to sort of congratulate myself. Great, you did an email to BP, good for you, now go around and see your mother. Whatever it might be, it gave me a sense of achievement, that constant micro moving onwards, even if it felt a little bit like a shuffle. And it filled me with the energy and kept me moving with forward momentum in a positive way. So it's a great one for all of us at the moment. Many of us are having to deal upon wave and wave of bad news, challenging P&Ls, reducing headcounts. And we need to do what we need to do right now, absolutely. But we can't allow ourselves to get stuck. You know, McKinsey talk about the fact that the challenge at the moment is having to kind of work in this absolute operational frenzy now and having to think about what the future might be tomorrow. And in our white paper, Leading Through Disruption, we talk about the Stockdale paradox. And the Stockdale paradox is based on Jim Stockdale, who was a prisoner of war in the Vietnamese War. And he was asked how he survived and got through the awful time of being a prisoner of war. And the Stockdale paradox was his reply, as detailed in Jim Collins' Good to Great. He said, you have to confront the brutal facts of your reality right now, whilst imagining there will be a better tomorrow. And I believe Onwards is that bridge to a better tomorrow. Just doing one thing a day. If you can't do it daily, then one thing a week. If you can't do it every week, one thing a month that you acknowledge is my small onward. Now, personally, I love Christmas. I have somewhere between 12 and 15 people around the table for Christmas lunch every year. This year, me, my husband and the dogs. Really, we're unlikely to have more than that. Yet, what can I do to make sure I'm not getting depressed about missing out on the fantastic Christmas that we normally have? So what I've done is I've planted hyacinth bulbs. I've ordered them online. I've planted the hyacinth bulbs. They will grow and flourish by Christmas Day. They will be a beautiful table setting, maybe to fill up some of the spaces where I don't have guests. But my onwards there is imagining what it will be like in 6 or 7 weeks' time when they burst through and there's colour on my dining table. But also it's allowing me on a day-to-day basis to physically see onwards. They're there in my kitchen. I can see these plant pots. Every time I see them, I start to smile and think about what will come in the future and what I'm creating, my small onward movement. So I hope today on the next slide, you'll see we've got live, work, create. I hope that today has given you some micro habits to help you live better, to help you manage your own resilience, to refuel that energy pack. Because if you do that for yourself, forget that you're leading teams. If you do that for yourself, you're able to then make better choices at work and hopefully create the life you need over the next 6 months. So I urge you to download our white paper or our workbook if you haven't done already, and just take a moment at whatever time is appropriate for you to really think about yourself, take care of yourself, remind yourself why you got into this business in the first place, take some time out to care for yourself, celebrate what you have achieved, understand what you can control, what you can influence, what you have to let go of, and then finally find that small little thing that can move you onwards.
Mark, thank you. Thank you so much. I hope everybody took something valuable from today's webinar. I know I do every time Mark and I talk about this workbook and the tools within it. Do use them, use them, find the ones that work for you. We're not saying that you must do all 5. We're saying find something that works for you, and that'll help you to build your resilience and recharge your batteries. And I just want to let you know that we run workshops like this, usually between 2 to 2.5 hours for teams, to work through those activities in more detail. So if that's something that you want to explore with us for your team, please do feel free to email me and get in touch. But it's been great to have you on the webinar today, everybody. Thank you for your contributions to the chat and to the polls. Thank you for joining, and look out for the recording later if you want to rewatch any of this. And do check your inbox if you haven't found the workbook already. But for now, I'll say thank you and goodbye, and stay safe and be strong.